Anyhow, let's talk about Fanny and Fred.
Yes. Nice segue.
We're going to talk to Harold the H. Peacock.
Yes.
He's our historian, and he's got a great story about Fred and Fanny Robinson from railway workshops 100 years ago. G'day there, Harold the H.
Yeah, good morning, Danny. Yeah, Fred and Fanny, they're quite a story from Ipswich.
Well, I've been to the railway workshops, and you should go down and check it out, and I've been there. It's wonderful history there. But, and you know Balinga Surf Lifesaving Club opposite the airport in the Gold Coast?
Yeah.
That was started by the railway workers.
Is that right? Yeah, well, there was a big connection between Ipswich and down the Gold Coast and the beaches, because it was the holiday houses. Everyone from Ipswich used to go down to Southport and down the coast.
That's a fact, but they used to hop on the train and pull into Coolangatta, and they used to take a tent with them, you know, the old-fashioned calico tent. So that's a little bit of history for you. You could check out one day, but let's get into this one about Fanny and Fred and Fanny. It was Fred and Fanny Robinson. Now, they came from England in Ipswich came from Ipswich and arrived in Ipswich in 1911. And that's when there was no hint as to what was in their past. Now, Fred took up a job as a labourer at the railway workshops. Now, the couple moved into 80 Woodend Road in West Ipswich, where they would live for the next 30 years. The house is still there today. Really?
Now, absolutely, and look, in fact, if the owners of 80 Woodend Road are listening, give me a call. I'd love to metal detect to see if we can find some Fred and Fanny relics.
Well, you don't want to find an old one of them, but go on, keep going.
Yeah, well, Fred went about his work quietly and efficiently, but as time went by, an unbelievable list of friends and acquaintances from before he came to Ipswich became apparent. Now, among Fred's personal possessions was a tie pin from the Prince of Wales, the future King Edward VIII, an engraved gold watch from the Duke of York, the future King George VI, and a cigarette case a gold cigarette case from the Duke of Gloucester, the King's brother.
Wow.
You see, before coming to Ipswich, Fred had been the butler in some of the grandest houses in England. Now, he was a senior member of the household of Lord Talbot, whose mansion was renowned for having as many windows as days in a year, and for its lavish parties entertaining English nobles. Fred had valeted for the Earl of Inniskillen, who famously been a respondent in the divorce case in which the Prince of Wales was called to give evidence. He had also valeted for Sir Thomas Barclay, the international law advocate who was nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize no less than 11 times, but never won. And there was also Sir Francis Laking. He was the King's doctor who allegedly artificially inseminated Princess Maud of Norway, who then gave birth to the future king, who may actually have been Laking's genetic grandson.
Oh, God.
Fred was also butler for Sir Edward Clarke, who was England's leading lawyer in the late Victorian era and who represented Oscar Wilde in his disastrous prosecution of the Marquess of Queensberry. Now, when Fred began work on the railways, rumours of his royal service slowly spread throughout the workshops until finally he was called upon to butler for notable dignitaries visiting Queensland. That included the Australian Governor-General and all the state governors. Now, Fred's services were also called upon in the 1920s and 30s for the royal visits of the Duke of Wales, the Duke of York and his wife Elizabeth, and the Duke of Gloucester.
Wow.
And that's how those gold mementos were presented to him, in appreciation by the royals themselves. Now, by the time that Fred retired from the railways in 1939, he was a tool sharpener and an issuing officer in the tool room of the machine sections.
Wow.
He and his wife, Fanny, then went on a trip around the world that included visits back to the mansions where he'd been the butler. Now, this modest Ipswich couple were welcomed as privileged guests and were honoured on a scale that could not have been more lavish. Now, when Fred passed away in Ipswich in 1943 at the age of 64, the Ipswich Band gave a recital in Queen's Park as a token of respect. Now, Danny, I'm not aware of anyone else in Ipswich history being honoured in that way. But in reality, it's a perfectly understated way to mark the passing of Fred Robinson, who, despite mixing it with royalty his whole life, and perhaps trying to escape it,
always came back to his job on the Ipswich Railways.
Wow, and so many innuendos with Fred and Fanny and Till Sharpener. It was getting a bit R-rated there for a minute. But Dan Fox from the coast, he loves your segment. We have a lot of people love your segment.
Oh, thanks. That's so kind. But in fact, if there's anyone listening, the people that love it, wouldn't it be great to find a living descendant of Fred's and get to see those gold mementos that he got?
And if you live in 80 Woodend Road at Woodend, could you contact the radio station? We want to talk to you. We want to get round there with his big thing and try to metal detector and try to find stuff.
We'll do it live, a live metal detect one morning out there at Woodend.
Let's
looking
do
for Fred and Fanny.
That'd be brilliant. Well, look, historyouthere.com is where you'll find this story tomorrow. It'll be downloaded. Get on there. And while you're on there, record something. Give us an arc. Just say, I love listening to Harold the H. Peacock on historyouthere.com.
Thank you very much, Danny. That was great.
Have a great day.
You too.
8:21.